The Spanish Princess, Season 3, Episode 5, Plague. This episode really triggered me. Now, we all know who Henry VIII is. This is an old story. If you're watching this show, you probably know how this story ends. You're probably already familiar with him and how he moves. But I was really, really triggered. Henry, excuse my language, showed his whole ass this episode. He was just being a bastard to everybody, mainly Catherine. But let's just jump into the episode. So last week we saw that Catherine walked in on him cheating with Bessie Blount, who is her lady in waiting. She caught them having sex. This episode picks up, I'm imagining, months later, and this affair is going on. Catherine is aware of it. Henry knows that Catherine's aware of it. The court is aware of it, and Catherine's just trying to stomach it. It's so embarrassing, and Henry is showing no discretion. He's running around the palace with her, giggling and kikiing like they're two teenagers. Like he's not a whole king, and he don't have a whole wife and queen. Just no discretion at all. Catherine is clearly embarrassed. Lena talked to her. It's like, how are you dealing with this? How do you even stomach this? And, there's nothing for her to say. She can't say anything. I mean, this was the 1500s. This was commonplace for kings to cheat on their wives. She's familiar. She knows how this goes. She imagined it would be different between them because they seem to have a connection. They seem to be in love, and she's so much in love with him. But at the end of the day, he's just doing what most of them did back then. He's using him not having a son as an excuse to do this to her, and it's deplorable. It's hard to watch. So Catherine is basically turning to prayer, and we start to see, I guess she's always been a religious person. She's always been a devout Catholic, but I think this is where we start to see her turning to prayer and to God to get her through all of this. And later on in your years, you see that she's kind of always praying. She's always in prayer. She's always, that seems to be how she copes with things. And it seems like this is where it's really kicking into gear because she's going through so much with Henry. So Bessie is still her lady in waiting. Bessie is still attending to her, dressing her, and doing all these things. You see a scene where Catherine is taking out her aggression on Bessie, and it's understandable. It is and it isn't. So, and let me just say this, although we are watching this show from the point of view of Catherine, so we do feel an allegiance towards her, and we are in her head, and we know her entire story, so she's the protagonist for us. Let me just say this in Bessie's defense. When King Henry set his eyes on her and he decided that she was going to be his mistress, there was really no way for her to say no. She's truly at the mercy of the king. I mean, the queen is at the mercy of the king. Everybody is. Even if she wasn't attracted to him, even if she wasn't interested in him, and she may not have been for all we know, there was nothing she could do. She had to go along with it, and she had to go along with it willingly and act like she enjoys it. So while she is betraying Catherine in a huge way, her hands are tied. So I'm just going to put that out there. Again, granted, I'm on Catherine's side with this, but the true villain here is Henry, and everybody else is, in a sense, a victim. We see that Catherine is still not dealing with her baby. She's still not engaging with her. We see scenes where the baby is crying and she basically ignores it, where Lena and her other ladies in waiting have to step in and take care of the baby, tend to her. They try to say, hey, check out your daughter. She's thriving. Look how big she's getting and all this other stuff. Catherine is not here for it. And it's simply because Henry is not here for it. She feels that Princess Mary is a disappointment because she really wanted to give Henry a girl and she didn't. And Mary is the reminder of that. So not only is Henry being an ass to Catherine, but we see that he's being an ass to a lot of other people in his circle. And the common denominator here is Wolsey. He is all in the king's ear. He is leading him from behind. He's pulling the puppet strings. He has a strong influence over Henry. Brandon sees it. Lord Stafford sees it. His sister Meg, everybody sees it. Everybody knows what's going on. And But Wolsey don't care that nobody likes him as long as he has the ear of the king. So we're going to see later how Henry's essentially just going to be screwing everybody around him. You know, obviously what he's doing to Catherine. He has Charles betrothed to some little girl for political reasons. When Meg comes back to England asking for his support so that she can get her sons back and she can regain her role as a regent of Scotland, he's not supporting of her. He won't send troops. So she says, okay, fine, you don't want to send me troops, just give me my inheritance. Because you remember his older brother Arthur, who was supposed to be king, when he passed, there were inheritances that were supposed to go to all the siblings. Henry will not give Meg her inheritance, because if she had that money, then she could rally her own troops and go to Scotland. But he won't even do that. So he's just being an ass to everybody. And I know I'm cursing a lot, but this episode really just, ugh. There's a plague in England. As this happened, this was commonplace at the time. A plague breaks out. We see that William Compton is the first victim that we are aware of. Margaret Pole and Thomas More come upon him when he's dying of the plague, and they tell everybody else, you guys have to evacuate, there's a plague. And you know, you see everybody running around with masks on their face. I guess it seems kind of familiar in this time that we're in right now, and they all flee London. They were going to go to another one of the palaces, but then here comes Wolsey with his manipulative self and says, hey, why don't y'all come to Hampton Court Palace and stay there? I would love to host all of you at my palace. Catherine doesn't love the idea because she doesn't like Wolsey, but Henry makes an executive decision. He says, we're going to Hampton Court Palace. So they all take off. Catherine is in a wagon with her ladies in waiting, and one of whom is obviously Bessie. So on the way to Hampton Court Palace, I don't know how long it is. I imagine it's a long trip. You know, they're in a horse-drawn carriage. The rest of the women are falling asleep. Bessie's sitting across from Catherine, and she feels the tension. And she speaks to her. She says, good morning, Your Majesty. And Catherine lets her know, you are a plaything. This is temporary thing. He will tire of you, and he will be back with me. So do not get it twisted. That is my man. Bessie has nothing to say. What can she say to that? She just has to take it. She starts to throw up on the trip, and they think it's because of the ride. Come to find out, Bessie is pregnant. When they arrive to Hampton Court Palace, Catherine confronts Henry. She tells him that Bessie is pregnant. The first thing he says, is it mine? And he seems quite ecstatic to hear this. This was heartbreaking. It's one thing to cheat. It's another thing to cheat openly, but to be excited over the fact that you're about to have a child outside of your wedding, and to be excited while you're talking to your wife, I mean, it was cruel. It was just downright cruel. Catherine tells Henry that she wants Bessie out of here. She wants to send her away, and it's understandable. Like, listen, you cheated on me with her. She's pregnant. I don't got to look at this chick every day, and definitely don't want her in my household. But Henry insists that she stays. Why? Because Henry is hoping that she has a boy. Because if she has a boy, although that boy cannot be Prince, he cannot be Henry's heir. What it will tell Henry is that the fact that they have not had a boy is not his fault. And he even says to Catherine, if it's a boy, that means that I'm not being punished. Which means that Catherine is being punished. So he's just so blatantly disrespectful and mean to her. I mean, she is suffering. She lost those babies too. She wants to have a son. She wants to give this to Henry. And for him to just be so blatantly disrespectful and cruel to her and essentially say to her, hey, you're the problem. It's your fault that we don't have a boy. It's not me. So we move on throughout their stay at Hampton Court Palace. We see a scene where they're all sitting at dinner. Catherine is sitting at the royal head of the table with Henry and others, and she's looking at Bessie. Bessie's sitting at the table, and Bessie is just eating, and I guess it's indicative of the fact that she's pregnant. And Catherine sees this, and you can just, you can see the slow revolving of her thoughts, that she is watching this woman be pregnant with her husband's child. She has to stomach it. She has to keep up appearances. She has to stay here. And, folks in the court are snickering. They're gossiping. They're talking about it. And she has to just sit there and take it. It's just really a lot to swallow. And she's doing it with a lot of dignity and grace, because God knows it is difficult. We will see later on with Henry's second wife, Anne Boleyn, how she was cut from a different cloth, and she would not accept Henry's nonsense, or at least she would be outwardly expressive about how it made her feel, whereas Catherine is holding it all in. Charles Brandon, Lord Stafford, a lot of other folks in Henry's court hate Wolsey. They see him for who he is, and they take jabs at him. They're talking about his beautiful palace, and they're like, well, how the hell did you afford this? Like, you have all of this property, and you're supposed to be a man of the Lord. Men of the Lord back then are supposed to have, they're not supposed to live in wealth. The two do not coincide. It's like you cannot be a man of the Lord and be wealthy, because there seems to be a conflict of interest there. But obviously Wolsey has all this money. Come to find out later that he's taking bribes from the French. And this is why he's so intent on Henry, or so intent on England having an alliance with France, because those are the folks who are lining his pocket. So he's a scoundrel. Remember last week, he was urging King Henry to appoint him to become Cardinal. We see that actually went through, because somebody at the table congratulates him on the fact that he got the Cardinal, I don't know what you call it, but he's become Cardinal now. Catherine hears this. She's visibly upset, because she warned Henry against this, and this is just more evidence of the fact that his power is growing and hers is decreasing. She gets up from the table. She just can't stomach it anymore. It's bad enough she got to sit here and watch Bessie eat, and now she finds out that the Cardinal has been made, now finds out that Wolsey has become a Cardinal, and it's just too much for her. So she gets up and she leaves. Cardinal Wolsey, being the bitch that he is, he makes an announcement that Henry is expecting another child. So of course everybody's like, oh, Queen Catherine, you're pregnant again. And he's like, no, it's Bessie. Bessie's the one who's pregnant. So he blows Bessie up at the table, because I'm sure some people knew, but not everybody knew. And those who didn't know the whole, all of this drama and this love triangle, and now everybody knows, because everybody's sitting at the table. So essentially he was embarrassing Catherine, because she got up from the table to leave because she was upset about him becoming Cardinal. And Henry does nothing. He is allowing this man to disrespect his wife left and right, and it's disgusting. We move over to France, and we see, now this is where a little humor was injected into this. Mary, who is Henry's sister, she was married off to King Louis of France. He's an old man. She did not want to do it. She went along with it because her brother promised her that if she went ahead and she married Louis, that the next time she got married, it was her decision. Louis is old. So Mary is just having all kinds of sex with him, trying to basically kill this man. So you see all these sex scenes, and she's going to town on this old man. And I have to say, girl, I'm impressed, because I don't know that I could have done that. But she wants him gone, and it's a success. All of this, his heart can't take it. She wears him out, he dies. She writes a letter to England and lets them know Louis is dead. So now I am the Dowager Queen. I have to stay here for a little while and be in mourning, and then I'm heading back to London. Catherine overhears Henry talking to Wolsey about who they are going to now marry to, like she's livestock. He's like, well, who's, basically like, who's the highest bidder? And so of course Wolsey wants that alliance with France, so he's looking for other folks in the French royalty that they can marry off to. Catherine hears this, and she's like, Henry, wait a second, you told her that after this she can marry whoever she wants. Henry's basically like, listen, I do what I want to do. I can buy and sell anybody. It is what it is. He screams out to the window. He says, hey, Charlie, go to France and get my sister and bring her back. And while we figure out who we are going to marry her off to next. Catherine is disgusted. She goes and she writes a letter to Mary and lets Mary know, this is what your brother is about to do. So by the time Charles makes it to France to go get married, she's already hip to the game. She knows exactly what's going on, and she's prepared. She pretends like she's in mourning because she has to do that because her husband just died. And now she tells Charles, listen, you and I have always had something going on between us. They were pretty much raised together because Charles is Henry's best friend. So I guess he's been around since they were children. We saw in the first episode that the two of them had this little flirtatious brotherly, sisterly kind of thing going on. But obviously there was something else under the surface. And she lets him know, listen, I'm feeling you, you're feeling me. Let's just go ahead and get married. And Charles is like, listen, you know, I'm betrothed to this little girl that Henry betrothed me to for political reasons. He's trying to marry you off to the next person. You know, we can't do this. He's going to be pissed at us. And Mary's like, listen, that's my brother and that's your best friend. He'll get over it. And she convinces Charlie and they go ahead and get married in France. Smart move, Mary. I love the balls of it. I love that Mary and Margaret both are not afraid of Henry. And while he is the king, they are princesses. They are also daughters of the king. They are daughters of the King of England. And that's just their brother at the end of the day. So they give it to him. They stick it to him and they tell him about himself constantly. And I love it. Catherine is out in the garden and she comes across Bessie, who's sitting over in the cut crying. And now Catherine is not feeling Bessie. She's obviously upset with her for 1,000 reasons, but she does have a heart. She is a woman, so she rolls up on Bessie. She's like, listen, what's wrong? And Bessie tells Catherine that Wolsey just told her if she gives birth to a girl, she's got to go. They're going to banish her from court. They're going to send her back to her family. And her family is like, listen, you're going to have to live in the street because you've disgraced our family now. You are an unwed, pregnant person. You're going to have a bastard. Regardless of the fact that it's the king's, we not messing with you. So now she's distraught because she's sitting here like, well, what if I have a girl? I'm just done for. And Henry promised me all these things. He told me that no matter what happened, I would be okay. She tells Catherine this, and Catherine is kind of like, you know, what did you think was going to happen? How did you think this was going to play out? She doesn't have sympathy. She hears her, but she doesn't have a lot of sympathy for her. However, she does go back to Henry and she's like, listen, you told this woman that you were going to take care of her and now you're going to banish her if it's a girl. Like, what's really good with you? You can't go around lying to people. And she checks him. You know, you lied to your sister. You won't give Margaret her inheritance so that she can go ahead and retrieve her children from Scotland. Now you've lied to Mary. You promised her that you were going to let her pick her next husband and you've reneged on that. You told Bessie that she would be taken care of regardless. You reneged on that. And you've been unfaithful to me. You're being disrespectful to your friend Charles, to your childhood friend. Like, you are really pissing everybody off. And she lets him know about it. Henry claps back at her. He's like, what, you talking about betrayal? I want a son. That's all you had to do was give me a son, and you didn't give me a son. I need an heir. And he reiterates to her why this is so important, as if she doesn't already know, as if she doesn't want to give him a son, as if she didn't give birth to 2 boys already. But he's like, listen, I need a son. And I get it, Henry, you need a son, but this is not the way to go about it. You can't just go around mistreating everybody because you're mad because you don't have a boy. And you can't blame it on everybody else. But that's what he's doing, and he can because he's the king. So Catherine and Henry, they're not in a good place, but they are still having sex because he still is trying to have a son, because that even if Bessie has a boy, that child cannot be his heir. It's a bastard. So he still has to have sex with Catherine, and he still has to try to sire a son. But you can tell the sex is different. It seems very mechanical. They're just going through the motions. You can tell Catherine's not into it. Her heart is essentially broken. And then to make matters worse, when she leaves their rooms, she finds Wolsey slithering around the hallways in the cloak of darkness, like the snake that he is. And he confronts her and essentially says to her, you know, you have all these other great attributes. You're a warrior. You come from good stock. You know, you're a businesswoman. You're this, that, and the other. But you can't give him a son. And if you can't give him a son, then all those attributes don't mean anything else. It was cold. And Catherine had nothing to say. She just had to walk away. It was cold. It was cold-hearted. It was cold-blooded. But sadly, it was the truth. If Catherine had just had a son, if their first son had lived, if their second son had not been stillborn, we probably wouldn't be here. And as tragic as that is, it's just the truth of the matter. And Catherine knows it. So what could she say? We see Catherine in chapel. Again, she is continuously turning to prayer and to God to get her through this. Lena finds her and she tells Lena, you know, I hate Bessie. And I know I shouldn't hate her. I know it's not her fault, but I hate her. I've had really bad thoughts. I've thought about her dying. I thought about the child dying, and I feel terrible about this. So not only is she struggling with what's been done to her, but she's also struggling with her feelings about what's been done to her. Lena tries to support her, say, hey, listen, these are just thoughts. We all have bad thoughts. As long as they're just thoughts, it's nothing wrong with it. Catherine goes on to say that she believes she might be being punished because she lied about the fact that she was a maid and that she had never consummated her marriage with Arthur, Henry's older brother. Lena tells her, you were just following your destiny. It was your destiny to become Queen of England. You were just doing what you had been raised to do. Catherine says, true, but was it my own ambition that was driving me? So she's questioning herself. She's questioning her motives. She's having a real introspective moment. And she's wondering if, in fact, she did do something wrong. And did, people say the ends justify the means. And she's wondering if that in fact is the truth, because now she is in a really bad predicament. And she's thinking that it's a sign from God. Lena tries to talk her off the ledge, but it's a little too late for that. The plague passes. We learn that the plague is over. It must have been months, because at this point, Bessie is fully pregnant. And if you remember, she wasn't even showing at the time that they were traveling to Hampton Court Palace. So she might have been, I don't know, 8, 9, maybe even 12 weeks then. And now she's fully pregnant. So it's been at least 6 months. They are now happy to be returning back to England because the plague has passed. Catherine gets a note from Mary that Mary and Charles Brandon have married. She goes and she tells Henry. He is obviously livid because he feels like they have betrayed him, because he had plans for his sister, he had plans for Charles, and he believes that he can rule everybody, which he can, but he is ruling with an iron fist, and he explodes and he calls it treason. He says that they will be banished and they will be, they might even be executed. I don't know. He's just throwing out a whole bunch of stuff. He's basically having a tantrum. Because let's remember here, while he is King of England, he's still a young man. At this point, he's in his early 20s. And he is somebody who is coddled and who is everything he wants. People have given him, and they are constantly acquiescing to his needs. So he lacks the maturity of not getting what he wants, of being told no. And this is why him not being able to have a boy is such a huge thing for him, because this is the first time in his life he's probably not getting what he wants, and it's something that's out of his control. Catherine tells him, hey, you promised her she can marry who she wants to, and you married Charles off to some kid for political reasons. Who are you mad at? We hear some screaming and some yells. Bessie has gone into labor. So Catherine goes upstairs. She sees them milling around, and you can see the anxiety because she is like nervous. Like, is it going to be a boy? Because if it's a girl, one and done. It takes the pressure off. Henry can now be like, all right, well, it's not Catherine because I didn't have a boy with her either. She knows that she will be banished, or at the very least be sent away from court. A girl will solve a lot of these problems. If it's a boy, it's a problem. If Bessie dies or the kid dies, it might solve the problems, but I think Catherine's conscience will bother her because she subconsciously wanted that. So then she's going to have to grapple with that. So this is a pivotal moment for her, because the outcome is going to set the stage for the next few years, at least the next few years of their lives. Bessie's having problems. She's having problems pushing the baby out. They wonder if she's going to be able to do it. Catherine bolts into the room, and she takes a little, I guess what was a scalpel at the time, and she cuts Bessie open so that the baby can get out. I guess it's kind of like a modern day episiotomy. The baby, Bessie's able to deliver, and it's a boy. So this is heartbreaking. Catherine takes the baby, she swaddles it up. Before Bessie can even see the baby or hold it, she takes the baby and she goes off and brings it to Henry. She busts in on Henry while he's again sitting in council with Wolsey as per usual and tells him that it's a boy. Henry is elated, You know, he jumps up out of his seat. He takes the baby from her arms. And it's hard. It was a tough moment. I don't know what Catherine's intention was there. I mean, she presents him almost as if it's their child. She's like, listen, here's your boy. And I think this was evidence of how much Catherine loves him. She truly loves this man, and she truly wants him to have what he wants, even if it doesn't come from her. I think that that's what that moment was demonstrating. And it was really just another moment of her being the bigger person and accepting what it is and presenting him with what he wants, which is the boy. I would be remiss if I did not speak about what happened in Scotland, because that is also a storyline that is happening on the same track. In the beginning, we see Meg is in England. She came to England last episode. She had asked her brother for some troops. He refused her. She's still in England, and she's pressing him like, hey, listen, you really have to help me with this. I need to go get my sons back. I need to go back and resume my regency. Henry tells her, you know, all you had to do was not get married. You messed that up. I'm not supporting you. She's like, okay, fine. Well, just give me my inheritance from Arthur and I'll get my own troops. And he blows her off. She gives him the business, but she still doesn't get what she wants. We see her ride back up to Scotland. She goes back up to the Scottish court. At this point, we have the Duke of Albany, who is the next in line to succession after her oldest son. He's in Scotland, and he is taking on the role of regency. She meets up with him. She tells him that she wants her sons. He received her well. He was not adversarial. He tells her, you can come see your sons whenever you want to, but I technically am the regent, and I have to oversee them until your son is of age and he can take over as king. But you are welcome to stay here. You are welcome to come and see them as often as you would like. She reunites with her son. It was a good moment. He also goes on to tell her that Angus is back at their home where they were living together, and he has a new woman. She rides over there. Angus pretends like he's so happy to see her. She sees the said woman in her house, and she confronts him. She's like, you know, number one, you betrayed me by giving my boys to the rest of them. And he's telling her, I only did that because it was for the best of us, and otherwise it wasn't going to turn out well. She's like, and you have another woman here in my house. He starts pandering. No, she's just my bed was cold. I was lonely. She's just a substitute. I really want to be with you. She's nobody. She's in the background saying, well, listen, he was sleeping with me before y'all even got married. So it's obvious that this guy is no good, and he's been playing the both of them. And Meg seems to be over it. She's like, you know what? Get your stuff, you and your girl, you get out of my house. You got to go, and I will and this marriage is over, and I will figure out how. So she kicks him out. This episode was really well done. They packed a lot into an hour. It progressed the plot line along well. It did some really good character development. Now we're starting to see the dark side of Henry. We're starting to see where he's becoming this bastard who he later becomes, or this bastard who we all know him to be. It was hard for me because I feel that we see these little glimmers of him being human and him loving Catherine and being a decent human being. But I really believe it's the hold that Wolsey has on him that is turning him into this bastard in which he's mistreating everybody around him. It seems like the beginning of the demise of their marriage. But it was good. It was disheartening, but it was a really good episode. The acting was amazing. Whoever is playing Catherine, I don't know her name. She's phenomenal. She is absolutely phenomenal. She captures all the emotions, the way that you can see what she's feeling underneath, yet she is maintaining her decorum on the surface. She does that extremely well. Really, really well done. Looking forward to next week. I believe what we're going to see is that Mary and Charles are going to return to England. Henry is obviously pissed at them, and we will see how this is going to play out. How this is going to play out with Bessie's son, the bastard. What is going to happen next with Catherine and Henry and their relationship. So it's unfolding nicely. Thank you for joining me. I really enjoy reviewing this show. Please drop down in the comments if you have some questions, some comments, what your take was on this episode. I would love to talk to you guys about it. And that's all I have for today. So don't forget to like and to subscribe, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.